Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another one-on-one with Jerry Hall. Today's guest is the phenomenal internet sensation, Mr. Tom Bilyue. Now, interesting story. One of the contributors or commenters in one of the Friday night live streams said, "Hey, you got to check out this guy, Tom Bilyue. He's got a great YouTube channel." I registered it when it happened and went about my life. And as I was doing an internet search, I was probably looking for an interview of some sort. In that little algo thing that YouTube says, "Hey, these are suggested videos you should check out," there was a Tom Bilyue, Michael Saylor interview. And I was like, ooh. So I went and checked it out. Man, I went, this guy, I like this guy. This guy's on a mission, and I really appreciate that what he's doing is trying to help and benefit others. He's done very well for himself, and he wants nothing but success for other people. That is very, very honorable and somebody that I wanted to connect with. So I reached out to Tom, and he agreed to have a chat with me. Here it is. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. How are things going in your neck of the woods?
Very good, dude. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'll tell you, I found your channel as I was just looking at the side panel of suggested videos, and I saw that you were interviewing Michael Saylor. And obviously, for me being in the crypto space, I wanted to check out what Michael had to say. And I will tell you, as much as I adore Michael Saylor and the message that he sends, what really stood out for me in that particular interview was you. And,
Wow,
and here are a couple of the key points that I took away. That here is somebody that created a channel, created a following that didn't have anything to do with crypto, yet it's like you exposed your belly. Right? You exposed your belly and said, "Hey, this is an area that I don't know anything about, but I want to learn." And that keyed me into what I think is the most valuable and most important topic that you and I can discuss today. And that is the process of learning, why it's important, and how available it is to everyone. Yet, so many important segments of our life are unlearned by so many of us.
Yeah, dude, learning is everything. That's like my claim to fame is I didn't come into anything super smart. In fact, that was like my big insecurity as a kid, is that I was always horrified by how much smarter my friends were. And that was a real deep source of insecurity. And then as I got into business, I realized, okay, well, I can learn this stuff. And my obsession became reading about the brain and discovering what Carol Dweck would now call a growth mindset, but we didn't have that amazing book back then. And so that really is a demarcation point in my life where I realized, okay, wait, the human animal is the ultimate adaptation machine. I didn't, say it like that, but just realizing that I could get better. So even if I wasn't the smartest person today, did not mean that I had to be dumb tomorrow. But if you decide to go down that path, you have a really important line that you have to cross, which is you have to stop valuing yourself for being smart. You have to stop valuing yourself for having the right answer. You've got to stop thinking about being worthy or good or whatever. And really just think about the only anti-fragile personality type to have, which is to be the learner. And that one decision changed the rest of my life.
I love that. And so one of the elements that has always been kind of a thorn in my side is that I was just kind of A-type personality. Generally, people have, one or two reactions to me. They like me and want to associate with me, or I attack some sensibility that they have and they would rather not deal with me. But for the most part, I was always able to make money. Always. It was never a concern. I would just apply myself and money would come to me, whether it was painting a house and then eventually building homes or eventually running projects for other people, etc. It always came easy. and I never gave it two thoughts, right? I always made more than I needed to live, and I would always expand my expenditures to meet my increased income, and therefore nice stuff came, right? Nicer cars, motorcycles, new TVs as they got better and better and better, and the video game and all the stuff. It was just a lot of stuff. Well, when I got to a point in my life where my son moved out and I decided I'm done with this, working my tail off just to pay everybody else, right? Just to pay the mortgage, just to pay the car notes, just to pay my vendors, just to pay this, just to pay that. I realized how much I didn't understand about money. And this is at 50 years old, I'm discovering this, right? And my desire to continue to apply myself where I would trade my time for money, I wasn't, there was an element that I lost that charge. And so I've fallen down the rabbit hole of what we might call financial literacy. And there was something in that interview with Michael Saylor, and it was reconfirmed when I watched the interview you did with Raoul Pal, that you too were very similar to me in that you would apply yourself, you could earn and create money, but looking and understanding, or actually really diving into what money is, what is value, how is it stored and transferred, who are the ones involved in that, who are actually profiting from that. I could see that the crypto industry has keyed you into a whole new path of learning. And I'm really excited for you to share with my viewers and myself what that process has been like for you so far, because it's been relatively new. I think 2021, it's fair to say, is when you kind of fell into that rabbit hole.
Yeah, no doubt. So to your point, never wanted to learn to invest money. I found it really boring, really complicated. And I found earning money so thrilling that I was like, I'm just going to put all my money into that one basket. And that's really been my only bet. Now it looks smart because I've created real wealth in my life. But in my 20s, everybody thought I was out of my mind. I wasn't saving for retirement. I didn't understand investing principles at all. And so now I have a money manager. My money manager is haranguing me. She's like, Tom, the way that you deal with your money is ridiculous. Like, you might as well stuff it under your mattress. And I'm like, well, funny you should say that. I'm trying to get as close to buried in my backyard as I can get. Because look, I've generated, tremendous wealth in my life. That's what I'm good at. That's what I enjoy. I don't want to lose my money, but I'm not worried about growing it. All of my high risk stuff is I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to bet on that next business that I build. And flash forward, and my money manager is, traumatized at how little I do with my money. And one of my employees starts haranguing me, and he's like, hey, you need to look at crypto. And I'm like, David, I don't care about investing money. I want to focus on getting good at building businesses. That's what I do. He was like, Tom, I really think there's something happening here. You need to pay attention. David, knock it off. Leave me alone. I cannot. For like 6 months, I told him, go pound sand, kid. And finally, NFTs come along. And I had been introduced to the idea of digital scarcity about 6 years ago. And I remember saying to the guy, that's going to change my business forever. But the technology wasn't ready. So I put it out of my mind and didn't think about it. And then they come back up, at the very beginning of 2021. And I was like, oh my God, this is that digital scarcity that guy told me about. I'm all in. We allocate literally overnight millions of dollars into development, and we just go. Now, like with anything, I need to go learn it. So I start learning about this thing called the blockchain. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Blockchain leads you to cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency leads you to investing principles. And then I was like, oh my God, why did I put this off for so long? This is so brilliant. And it was really Michael Saylor talking about inflation. And I was like, wait, so if I actually, which I don't, so anybody thinking about coming and digging in my backyard, I do not actually bury my money in the backyard. But if I do that, some version of that, the banking equivalent of that, I'm losing my buying power, which I'd never taken the time to wrap my head around. Like, I knew inflation was like 2% a year, but that seems really small, right? So I just didn't think about it. And then he was like, well, what if it's 7%? Or what if it's 15% like I think it is? Or what if it hyperinflates? like it has in other countries. When you look at the fact that, whatever 38% of all dollars ever created have been created in the last 24 months, it's like, whoa. So that started to get me realizing that just to move my business forward, I was going to have to learn the blockchain. And hey, since I was learning it, I was encountering all these fascinating investment principles. I might as well move on it a little bit. That's always my way. It's like, I'm going to get in here. I'm going to get my hands dirty. So I think, okay, I'm going to get to 1%. That seems reasonable. I'll get 1% in crypto. And as I learn about it and start doing that and building my NFT technologies, the more bullish I get about it as a technology. So then I'm like, okay, 2%. And then, by 2%, I'm like, well, 5%. And then at 5%, I'm making so much money because at the time it was just like going up, up, up. I was like, holy Lord. So now it's like I'm roughly at 10% on my way to 25. So it's funny how, like as you actually learn this stuff, you get way more comfortable. And then I have felt a moral obligation to tell people what's going on. Now, if they research it and they're like, Tom, you're a moron, because I can't see the future. So who knows? But if they research it and say that I'm dumb, fair enough. But if they don't understand it and they reject it, I fear that, as Raoul Paul said, this is the first time in human history where the average person can front run the institution. If that's really true, and this is the opportunity that,
or
I
at
think
least
it is,
be on a level playing field, right? A poor person can put 10% of whatever they have, just as a rich person can put 10% of whatever they have.
But even when you push it a little farther, if you go to institutions, most of them, the structure of their organization won't let them get direct Bitcoin exposure. So it's like, when you think about, and this, I remember Raoul and I were talking about this. The one thing is I started learning about investing, like even, 6 or 7 years ago when I first generated money, I was like, wait, so I'm an accredited investor now, even though I know nothing about investing, but somebody who has less liquid net worth than I am can't be, even though they know more about it. I remember saying to my friends, I was like, why aren't people rioting in the streets over this? Like, that's insane. So they're not able to take advantage of something that they understand better than I do, simply because they don't have the money. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So some of the rules around all that stuff remain absolutely absurd to me. And now the more that I learn about it, the more I'm like, whoa, I can't believe people aren't really angry about this.
Well, here's a perfect example. You don't need to be an accredited investor to open up a Coinbase account and buy your first $10 worth of Bitcoin.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And that to me is really incredible. Now, everybody has different objectives in their lives. And one of mine is to achieve some level of consistent financial security and actually have my investments provide an income for me, because I'm no longer have a desire to trade my time for money, right? I don't want to build businesses. I'm not necessarily interested in those things. I am interested, though, in putting my time into things that I really am passionate about. So like I'm working and sketching out a thing called Money Monkeys. It's an app game for kids to learn about financial literacy principles.
That's interesting.
Right. With some tie-in real world economy, so that, and all this technology allows us to transfer value cross-platform, cross-economy. It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. That's something I'm interested in, and I want to be able to fund that. So having assets that appreciate and then also drawing a passive income from them in the form of the yield they generate, to me, is really attractive. I'm curious for as a viewer of your content, a couple of things. One, what it's like for you deciding what you will bring your audience and what you won't bring your audience, because obviously the whole world is out there, and 2 million plus viewers is a pretty decent sized YouTube channel. How do you go about deciding what's valid and what isn't to bring to your audience?
I just have to research them. So I hold myself accountable to one thing: the advice that they give has to be real. So if somebody is talking about, and look, some things now are more that I'm chasing a fascination. But in the beginning, it was purely, I'm bringing on people that are going to give you life advice. And so that life advice needs to be real. And that was the barometer by which I judged everything. And now as I expand more into fascinating ideas, I have to actually be fascinated and want to spend that amount of time with you. And so when I bring somebody on, I actually read their book. So it's like, that's going to be a major time investment. So it needs to be something that I care about, that has some utility in my life. And it may just be that I'm interested, but more often than not, it either has business utility, investment utility, emotional utility, something along those lines. And so it needs to be something that I want to spend, the 10 to 12 hours that I'll spend researching somebody. It needs to be worth the time.
Right on. I think that's really cool. And I love your channel, by the way. I'm a subscriber, I'm a watcher.
Man, and
I really appreciate your approach to this. My channel is not large, and I have really no desire to grow it. I'm not incentivized by the AdSense or getting sponsors or things of that nature. It's really been a process of me documenting my journey of financial literacy, right? And what I've learned to this, 3.5 years into this, is how much I didn't know and I thought I did know. And it takes me back to, I grew up in the United States in California, went to school through California, even went to college. And I can honestly tell you that there was no organized education around financial literacy. I think the only thing, I got a balancing a checkbook course in my home ec class in high school, which I only took the home ec class because Madeline Potter was in that class. And I had a big crush on Madeline Potter.
We all have a Madeline Potter. I get it.
Had it not been for her, I would never have even got that class on how to balance a checkbook. How do you reconcile that with the journey that you're on? Because you're a constant educator, you're a relentless learner, and you're constantly feeding back what you learn to your audience. Yet you're in a country that is like abandoned the idea of teaching people how to interact and deal with money and what money is at its core. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
I have real empathy for the education system, because if, not to disparage anybody, but if you really have a gift for something, odds are that you're going to go do that thing. And so when you get to teaching, what you get is they have a gift for teaching. So they are doing the thing that they're truly great at, and God bless them, because I cannot think of, many jobs that are more brutal and demanding than being a teacher. But like, for instance, why can't you get great entrepreneurs or great teachers of entrepreneurship? Because if you're a great entrepreneur, you're going to be out building a business. And there's no way to teach entrepreneurship at that level if you've never been an entrepreneur. So it's a really hard equation. So I get that. I feel for that. And so if you're really good at investing, odds are you're not going to be teaching. And so we can't expect teachers to have this like insane breadth. And then you get to this idea of, if you can't think from first principles, meaning you don't understand that thing well enough, you can only copy. You can't be original. So now as a teacher, the best you can do is ape somebody that's the master in the field, because again, you're a master in teaching. And so it's rare, not that it doesn't happen, but it's rare that you get somebody who only teaches the very subject that they're a master in, right? So that sort of explains K through 12. Now, as you get into college, you still have the same sort of equation of you're an academic versus somebody that's out there doing it. Obviously, you get an elevated teacher type that's drawn to that. But ultimately, the thing that I focus on is I have learned, and I went to film school, so take that for what it's worth, but I had people teaching film that were like, my cinematography teacher was an accomplished cinematographer. So it's like, he really knew what he was doing. And yet the reality of learning is still such that I learned more after I graduated than I learned in school. And part of it is because you can really go down niche. Part of it is that you're in it all day, every day. And then the other part is just time. Like 4 years just isn't enough time. And then even that is subdivided into all these different little classes, but now I've been doing entrepreneurship for 20 years. So it's like, and that's not just 20 years of doing the act of entrepreneurship. That's 20 years of asking people questions, of reading books, of an obscene amount of time watching YouTube videos, all things that I could use immediately, right? So I'm learning about entrepreneurship and then trying it in my business. And when you get in that feedback loop and you have the like, oh, and PS, my house is on the line, so this is do or die. So it's like you get in this really interesting zone where a person who can acclimate themselves to the terrifying endeavor of learning while doing, they're going to blow ahead of everybody else, because success and learning alike are games of attrition. Most people just stop learning. And so look, whether or not the school, and I do, now that I'll take my empathy hat off here for a second and say, China's about to whoop this ass, because they're just like, y'all motherfuckers better get in school and learn. Like, they're not for play. And they have a whole agenda, like a 30-year agenda or whatever, of like how we're going to take over. And it's like, they're doing it. So I get it. Like, we should all, vote for the things that we think are right, and point our kids towards the things we think are right. And I don't begrudge anybody that, but I will say, have clarity on what your goal is, and then make sure that you're doing things that actually move you towards your goal. And right now, I don't feel like we're optimizing as a country for continued importance on the global stage. And so, hey, if we're cool with that and we know that's what we're doing, then so be it. I don't love that. I like the idea of, keeping that entrepreneurial spirit going, doing anything that we can to foster innovation, continuing to be the beacon, for the world, for people that want to come and do something. And, because I started in business so long ago, the number of times that I would interact with somebody in a foreign country that was like, you don't know how lucky you are to be an entrepreneur in America. Like, just the spirit of XYZ country, whatever it is, just like they don't have that celebration of, oh, you failed, cool, try again, right? For them, it's like, if you fail, you're an idiot, you never should have tried anyway, who did you think you are, what made you think you were special? And so I think we forget, like, that we spent the last 200 plus years calling to the whole world, if you've got that like can-do innovation spirit, come to America. And we're definitely no longer celebrating en masse. Of course, there are still amazing pockets, but we're no longer celebrating en masse that, there's a vilification of people that are too successful. And I don't know, I just think there are definitely mistakes being made, but I'm not blind to what leads people there. And so I'm not mad, but I would like to make sure that people they have a specific goal and they're doing things that move them towards that.
I'm a big believer in goals. Case in point, when I started my little investing career in 2016, I had $23,000. I was officially retired. I had sold all my equipment, my business, turned over all my clients to friends who had similar businesses. And when I got woke to the fact that I needed to do something, that I had to address this, it was imperative. The goal was that I wanted financial security for the rest of my life. And I was uncertain the amount of dollars it would take to do that. So I would need a ton. That was just kind of the thing. And so, although I didn't have a lot of resources to start, people need to understand you don't need to start with a lot. It's like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to not have a car? Are you willing to walk? Are you willing to take buses? Are you willing to eat top ramen? Are you willing to not buy new shoes for 4 years? Are you willing to, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice to get what you want? And I think the largest lesson I've learned from this whole experience was that it's okay to delay gratification, that it's okay. Now, that's a juxtaposition from a guy who grew up having money flow to him very easily. And if I wanted something, I would just go make more money. To now being in a position in my 50s where it's like, if I really want that thing, then I'm going to need to sacrifice. And so, it's been 4 years of sacrifice, but I'm so glad that I did. I'm buying this beautiful piece of property in Costa Rica. I'm building my dream home. I'm starting to do the things that I was willing to sacrifice for the last 4 years. And what I love about your content is that you're constantly inspiring to push, whether it's work harder, but also work smarter. And that's what I did. I chose, instead of to work harder, I just chose to work smarter. I chose to delay gratification. You know, I lived on $350 in Costa Rica for the last 4 years. Okay. With that mindset, and then obviously diving in and turning my little bit of capital into the bag that it is today, I'm able to start doing some of the things that I've dreamed about doing. And so what I would love to hear for you is not the Tom who is successful now, the Tom who wanted to be and didn't have the resources at his fingertips like you do now. What was that Tom like? And some of the behaviors or mindsets that you had to employ then so that you could get to the point where NFTs are interesting. I'm going to sign a check for a couple of $1 million to work on this technology. There's a big gap there. Let's go back to the Tom who was inspired but didn't have anything but what was between your ears.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was a pretty dark time because I was worried that I wasn't smart enough to make my dreams come true. So I had there's this movie called Amadeus, and in the movie Amadeus, there's a character called Salieri. It's based on a real character. And in the movie, he's a contemporary of Mozart, and he's also a musician. And in the movie, he laments to God, God, why did you make me just good enough at music to realize that I'll never be as good as Mozart? Why couldn't you have either made me terrible so I couldn't recognize how good Mozart was, or make me as good, but don't make me just good enough to recognize I'll never be that good? And I saw that in high school, and that became like the glowing orb at the center of my life of God, why did you make me just smart enough to realize that I'm not that smart? Why not make me dumb or really smart? But don't put me in this middle ground where it hurts to see how much smarter other people are. And I spent so many years there, and it was really like, what a waste of time. And finally, as sort of a last ditch effort, when I graduated from film school, could not figure out how to get anything going in my career, that I started reading about the brain because I was really spiraling. And I started reading about the brain. There was this idea of brain plasticity. And I thought, okay, well, it's hotly debated. This is in the late 90s, but I'm going to act as if I really can learn and get better, even though I'm not a kid anymore. And as I started doing that, I realized, oh my God, this is actually real. You really can get better. It's now what I call the only belief that matters. So the only belief that matters is that if I put time and energy into getting better at something, I actually will get better. And once you realize that is the truth of the human condition, that every species has a decision to make at the species level. Do we come pre-programmed with everything like a horse? 20 minutes after birth, a horse is doing everything a horse is going to do. Or the path of adaptation, which is what humans take, which allows us to drink deeply of the culture, of the actual environment that we're born into, whether it's hostile, whether there's a famine, whether there's plenty, whatever. We adapt to that. And in choosing that strategy as a species, then we have to get good at learning. But because learning is far easier when you're younger and it gets harder as you get older, we mistake that for you can't change past, whatever 18, whatever number it is that people have in their head. And so once I was like, okay, I can get better at anything if I apply myself, then it just became a question of what am I going to apply myself to? So in the beginning it was film. And then I wrote a screenplay, got turned into a feature film. And the final result was terrible. I was absolutely heartbroken. And I met these two very successful entrepreneurs, and they said, look, you're coming to the world with your hand out. And if you want to control the art, you have to control the resources. And so why don't you come with us and get rich? And I was like, yes, absolutely. That is what we're going to do. That makes all the sense in the world. I've known since I was a little kid that I was going to be rich. I always thought it was going to be through film, but now I see that I'm going to get rich in business and then use that to make films. Got it. And then I learned the most powerful lesson of my life over a near decade, which is that the struggle is guaranteed, the success is not. And so I had, was working and working and working and just every day showing up. I'm here to get rich. I'm here to get rich. I'm here to get rich. And it was soul sucking. And I finally realized the only thing that matters is feeling alive. And I wanted to go do that. And so I go in and I quit and I give the equity back, which technically on paper was worth about $2 million when I did it, but I didn't have any real money. Big difference between paper money and real money. And my partners were like, hey, we actually feel the same way. So what would it take for us to keep working together? So we decided to sell that company. I'm making a very long story short, decided to sell that company and start this new company on like a whim, essentially, of not a whim, but like on a new paradigm where we're going to focus on value creation, not money, being authentic, building community, like all these things. And then of course that company ends up being Quest Nutrition and it blows up and becomes a $1 billion company. Oh, the irony that it wasn't until I stopped chasing money and started pursuing value creation that I actually made money. So in that transition, I learned this like incredibly powerful set of lessons. One, the only belief that matters, that I can get better at anything. So, hey, I suck at this business thing now, but I can figure this out. And so I stayed in it. And so I watched all these other people give up, fall by the wayside, go for security. And instead, I just kept plugging away, kept embarrassing myself, kept looking stupid, but kept getting better and better and better. And having this sort of inside joke of, I know people are laughing at me now, but oh my God, one day I'm going to be the one laughing. And of course, that's how it works. And on a long enough timeline, I succeeded and, had the kind of transformational wealth that all the people who laughed at me have failed to accumulate. But once you realize that success is just a game of attrition, you start playing differently because you realize, okay, this is going to be a very long timeline, even if I'm good. So I better play this in a way that's fun right now. And I may never actually get the financial win that I want. So I need to ask myself a fundamentally different question. In business, the like classic question to ask yourself is, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do? And I realize that's the wrong question. The right question is, what would I do and love every day, even if I were failing?
Right.
And once I made that shift, then it was like, well, this is awesome. I'm having a good time getting good at this thing. And if it results in money, amazing. But if it doesn't, it is what it is. And then you get business savvy enough that you translate that passion into actual dollars and cents, but by pursuing value creation.
We're very similar in that way. My track has not been about like a specific number. My track isn't been about catching assets at a specific number. It's always been about the process, right? And the process is about learning and understanding and then application. And so there are a million YouTube channels that are about crypto and they're talking about price predictions and they're doing you'll never hear me do any of that. For me, it's always about the process, right? And luckily for me, in this particular space, a monkey is going to make money because it's in my opinion, the foundation and early adoption stage of a technology that will be ubiquitous in 20 years, right? So just like, and I saw this with the internet, but I didn't have an investor mindset back then. I just saw it, I recognized it, went, oh, this is gonna be fun. I bought a PC. I played Pinochle on Yahoo Games through a dial-up modem. I said, this is going to be wonderful. Never thought about the investment element of it. Seeing this new innovation really intrigued me. So let's transition. And I'd love to hear your early thoughts on Bitcoin. And then as you got deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, with smart contract capabilities like with Ethereum, I heard that you said your investment portfolio in crypto is Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink. So I'm wondering if that's changed. And I get it. Bitcoin store value, Ethereum programmable money, Chainlink, the bridge of information from outside of the blockchain to the blockchain. It's very rational and logical. So you'll get no complaints from me on your choice of construction of your portfolio, but take me back through this process because I find it really interesting.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was just like, why does this have value? So, you hear, because I didn't know what money was. So I'm like, what problem are you solving? So in not recognizing what the problem was, I was very confused. And I was like, well, it's like baseball cards. When people agree it has value, it has value. But if they don't agree that it has value, then it doesn't. So I could not understand the utility use case. And, you know, as I was saying earlier, I'm a utility maximalist. That's how I refer to myself. And I couldn't understand the utility. So I understand the utility of, you know, actual US dollars. I use them constantly, so it's not hard to grasp what that is. I understand the stock market, and not hard to grasp what that is. I did not understand Bitcoin. And so that's why I was just constantly like putting off that guy, David, that was telling me I really needed to pay attention, because I knew I would have to go in and understand it. And I didn't want to. Like every time I look at traditional finance and puts and calls, I'm like, oh God, like it's just it, as my British wife would say, it does my head in. And I don't find it interesting. And one thing I've said to people a lot is, once you realize the only belief that matters, that you can get good at anything, then how you spend your time becomes a spiritual consideration. And so I just never found it interesting. You know, it's like I never have to work again. I never have to think about money again. So why would I spend time thinking about growing my money? And then, of course, you learn the punchline, because your money is going away every day. And so then I was like, oh shit, I actually need to learn how to protect this. And because I got so excited about NFTs, because I started learning about what the blockchain is, then I started to get really excited about Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then my journey was, I met Michael Saylor. And you start watching him and you're like, what? Like, if he's right about half of this, like this is the biggest invention ever, certainly of our lifetime. And then the stat that changed everything for me was that the fastest adopted technology in all of human history is Bitcoin. And that this is all Metcalfe's law, and this is about network effects. And then when you understand why inflation matters, and you understand why Bitcoin is this never to be inflated asset ever, because there are 21 million units and that's it. And you realize the only way to protect yourself from inflation is to go to an asset that can't be manipulated and no more can ever be made of it. And then you ask yourself, does it have network effects? Do people believe that this thing has value? And so it was like, it checked all those boxes. And I was like, well, all I'm going to do is dollar cost average, because I think I'm a moron when it comes to investing. So I'm just going to buy a little bit. And so you buy a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And I've literally bought almost every day since the first day that I started investing. And I just keep doing that. And some days I look like a genius because I'm, you know, millions of dollars like up. And then other days I look like a moron because the, you know, prices fall. But as Michael Saylor says, when you're looking at the price of Bitcoin, anything in a shorter time increment than 4 years is just noise. So I'm like, I've only been in this for like 7 months. So it's like, I'm just hodling. I haven't sold a single Satoshi. So it's like, I just buy and accumulate and keep doing it. And as long as my thesis is that this really is digital gold, when you understand what gold actually is, then you're like, oh my God. So, and then I have a core thesis, which is technology is a one-way street. So we are only going more digitized. Things are only going to go more digital. And so this is like that first moment where technology, the technology is money being digitized. And so, yeah, just you begin to piece these things together. And so now look, I try to temper myself because I'm well aware that I can't see the future, but I am evangelical because, so here's what happened. Lower middle class kid from Tacoma, Washington. I always, from the time I'm like 12, I start telling people I'm going to be rich one day because I'm obsessed with John Hughes films set in like upper, you know, sort of that upper middle class, wealthy suburban Chicago look. And I was just like, that's what I want, man. My neighbors have cows and pigs and stuff like that. Like I want something different. And I just became obsessed. And so I was telling everybody, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. And then I actually get rich. And I'm like, whoa, like the way that I got rich was I came up in manufacturing, right? So I had 3,000 employees, 1,000 of them grew up hard. And I start realizing intelligence is evenly distributed. Rich neighborhood, poor neighborhood, doesn't matter. You have the same raw material and you will meet extraordinary people in the inner cities. but you will very quickly weep because you realize they're going nowhere with their life because of a frame of reference that holds them back. So I launched Impact Theory. My wife and I could have bought an island and retired. We don't. We decide to double down, work harder than we've ever worked. Why? Because I want to make sure that nobody gets to the age of 15 without encountering a growth mindset, which will lead them to a frame of reference, which will be useful so that nobody gets trapped by their zip code. Okay, that becomes the mission of my life. I build Impact Theory around that core thesis. I discover NFTs. I think I'm just doing NFTs as the next outcropping of building the next Disney. I learn about the blockchain. I learn about Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I realize, oh my God, this is going to change everything. This is this tremendous opportunity for people that have never invested before to generate wealth that won't be inflated away, right? And people, of course, your audience will know, but inflation sounds good, but it's actually fucking terrible. So you're losing your buying power. And I'm like, oh my God, like I've got to tell people about this. And so I've just become obsessed now that I'm so fiendish about it, which is, to answer the question of my journey. I go from thinking that like, why are people buying into this to like, I have a moral obligation to tell people about this.
I love it. I'm a big fan of Michael Saylor's also, and it's not hard to it's actually very difficult to find him not credible, right? Read The Mobile Wave and understand that he wrote it in 2010. Read that book and apply, he's all the same principles. You talked about first principles, all the same principles that he outlined in The Mobile Wave that came to fruition. It's exactly what he's talking about with this new technology, the blockchain, and specifically Bitcoin. I never do crypto price predictions, but I do occasionally do predictions. And I'm going to go on record right now. I am predicting that there will be a Tom Bilyue documentary on financial literacy in the new age of money, where you kind of maybe coalesce a Mike Maloney's history of money type of thing, but instead of everything, the answer being gold and silver, talk about these new monetary networks. I think you might be the guy that does that because you have a passion for it. Obviously, you have some expertise in telling a story, and then there's technical stuff on how you actually create a documentary. I'm curious, has that thought occurred to you in the last 8 months?
I've never thought about doing a documentary, but I've definitely tried to leverage my platform to create content that educates people on the topic. And right now, I think 4 of our 6 highest performing videos are all around crypto. So
Saylor, Raoul Pal, Anthony Papliano. What would be some of the other ones?
The other one is a video on finance. I actually can't remember if it's specifically if we talk about crypto or not. And then what's coming up, the next one that we have is God, I can picture him. The guy looks like a linebacker. Breedlove, Robert Breedlove.
Robert Breedlove, sure.
Oh,
he's
man,
wonderful.
I really like the guy.
I do too.
He's obnoxiously like well built. Like that motherfucker is tall and good looking. I wanted to punch him in the mouth, but he's really whip it smart and has such a great read on why this all matters. Yeah, I liked him a lot. So I hope that one hasn't come out yet, but it will soon. And hopefully that one continues to do as well. We got into more deep stuff. It's funny how I'm like tumbling down the like really deep end of all this now. Yeah, when you get to Robert Breedlove and sovereignty and like all that, it starts to be unnerving, quite honestly. Like as you realize that this is a political revolution and not just a financial revolution, which I'm stealing from somebody, but I don't remember who. That's like really unnerving for me.
And coincidentally, so constitutional. In a world where it feels like government creates laws that tend to take us farther away from our liberties and freedoms, right? More restrictions and things of that nature are put into place. This new technology really harkens back to some very core principles that are embedded in the Constitution. And one of the things I was always so proud of about being an American was that Constitution, was that theme song of, you know, liberty and justice and the pursuit of happiness and the ability to do so, and the great leveler, capitalism and democracy. And as I learned more and more, that's not necessarily so true. But now we're having some of these democratized systems come into play that are allowing at least some of those things to come back. And one of the most important things is how our value. Do we own it? Do we own our value? Do we have custody of our value? Do we have the choice to decide how we deploy that value? I think that is so friggin' cool.
It is transformational. And so whether it's good or bad, we'll let history decide. It's transformational. Like, it is going to change everything. Now, I think it's going to change things for the better, but it isn't going to be without its scary spots. It gives more freedom. There's no doubt about that.
Well, again, zoom out, right? Obviously, anytime there's disruption, whoever is being disrupted is going to have, you know, they have a voice. And for the most part, if you're talking about money, they have money, right? We're talking about the system of money. So the legacy system, who's entrenched in keeping the status quo, doesn't like this new stuff, then there's going to be some very big pushback, whether it be politically, through political channels, creation of laws and regulation, and or just information, right? So strap in. I've asked the questions that I wanted to ask on. I just like to riff. Is there anything you'd like to riff on for the next 10 minutes or so?
Man, with your audience, I think they're already there. But for anybody that's on the fence about this, as I was for so long and rejected it, it's, don't take my word for it. Don't take Michael Saylor's word for it, your word for it, Raoul Paul's, but do the research. Like, this is, so when you get down to the technology layer, and in fact, I'll give an example. It might be easier for people to understand how this is going to change everything as I explain what I think the future of NFTs looks like.
Okay.
NFTs was the thing that really opened the door for me and made me understand. So when you think about, if you think about Bitcoin as money, you're going to be led astray. If you think about Bitcoin as a technology that allows you to store value, that changes the conversation. And you begin to understand, okay, wait a second, this is a technology. That's what makes this interesting. If you think about NFTs as art, that's going to lead you astray. If you think about it as a technology that allows proof of ownership, that you can make something digital and rare, and it's more than rare. People are using the wrong words. And I myself am, the more I talk about this, beginning to define different terms. So here's what I think NFTs really do. They make both the internet and the real world more interactive and personalized. So imagine you go to the mall. Now, where NFTs meets AR is where I think people will see what this really is. So imagine right now, people think of NFTs as like, it's a JPEG. Tom, what are you doing? This is a waste of time. How could a JPEG ever have you, ever be worth something? How could it go up in value? That's dumb. Okay, well, imagine this. We're about to launch the impact theory NFT, right? It'll essentially be a coin, a token, whatever you want to call it. It will have utility. So if you have that, let's say 3 or 4 years from now, you go to the mall, whatever. And you know how they have like those boards that say like, you're here, go there, here are the shops, whatever. Now imagine that's just a QR code. You hold your phone up, or you've got your Apple AR glasses. You see that. Your glasses are already connected to your wallet. So your glasses know that you have that impact theory token. The mall, we've negotiated deals with some of the stores, and that thing shows you something that it doesn't show your friend. So your friend is looking at the same thing, and they don't see the impact theory offers or the special room that you can go in and meet one of our recent guests or whatever. Like, they don't get any of that, but you do. Or you're walking through the metaverse and there's a door that appears, and your friend's like, a door? There's no door. You're like, yeah, it's right there. It's got the impact theory logo on it. What are you talking about? I don't see anything. Oh my God, this is so crazy. They walk in. The other person tries to walk up and there's nothing. Either they can't get through the door or the door doesn't appear. the other person, because they have the NFT in their wallet, they are automatically entered into a space where we can give them access to limited items. We can give them access to exclusive experiences. We can give them discounts, like the number of things. This is like the dumb stuff that we're thinking of. This is the 1997 version of the internet, all the cool things that we can do that now, as people in the year 2021 are like, you don't even have Uber, dude. Like you have nothing, right? So we're on to like really basic stuff. Imagine what this is going to be in 20 years. If I can already think of you going to a shopping mall and being able to get exclusive discounts or access to a store the other person can't, like it's bananas. And then obviously when you're talking in a truly virtual world, the sky is truly the sky isn't even the limit, because there's no, whatever, like the laws of physics don't even apply. So when I think we've made a list of all the utility that we're going to add to our impact theory token, and I'm like, this is, even if you took one of the items that we're putting in there and just sold it, okay, you could sell it for more than we plan to sell at mint. So what this does is it allows the community to benefit financially from the growth of the thing that they love and support. And thinking about it in music terms, for instance. So let's say you discover a new band. For me, like, hey, there's this little known band from Aberdeen, Washington. The lead singer is Kurt Cobain. I think the band, it's an Indian word like Nirvana or something. And anyway, I love them. I bought their album, and I also bought one of their community tokens. And the community token, 30% of the royalties that they will generate forever get kicked back to the community pro rata based on how many of the tokens you own. It's probably never going to be anything, but I've got it. I love them. I want to support them. So I bought a couple of the tokens, and then they go on to be Nirvana. And that 30% royalty ends up being an annuity for me. That's like having, a part-time job. It's like, that is crazy. And so now all of a sudden people can benefit financially from all the things they love. This has never happened before. You've never been able to benefit financially from the things you love and would support anyway. So like Kickstarter is gone, or they're going to have to become an NFT company, because why on earth would I just, give you money for your comic book or whatever it is that you're making and hope that I get something when I can get a token that gets me that physical thing plus the ability for me to sell it. That's where this gets interesting. Hey, you bet on Rihanna. She's blowing up. And now you're like, you know what? I need some liquidity. I've got a 3x or a 3000x if you bet early on someone like Rihanna. And now I'm going to sell this to somebody else. That is, there's a joke in the NFT. It's not a joke, but there's a phrase in the NFT community. NFTs change lives. Now, it's the most risky asset class on planet Earth. There is very little liquidity, but it's insane. I myself, off of like, what did I spend? Maybe $250, and I bought 2 of them. And I sold them 48 hours later for $100,000. So it's like, this is crazy. Now, Wild West, I probably in the long run will lose way more than my, that win. But it's like, I collect for utility because I'm a utility maximalist. And so like 85% of the NFTs that I've bought, I'm hodling just to see what happens. But the fact that that even exists, because you can make a picture of a ape rare, or of a 8-bit graphic of a punk rare, and that I actually own that, and that can unlock derivatives and all the other things we've talked about. This is one of those where I'm so excited about this that I could go for the next hour just on all the things that NFTs are going to unlock for people.
Well, the beauty of it, Tom, is that it's not one thing, right? Here I am, I'm an older guy. I'm not that interested in art and things of that nature. I would get an impact theory token if it produced once a month or even once a quarter a unique interview or commentary or content that you create that wouldn't be available on YouTube.
Funny you should mention it.
I know. But I mean, and that's just one little, I mean, it is so vast. The community element of this, the economic incentives that are secondary to the community benefits. It's that perfect marriage. We've never seen this before. As an Amazon Prime member, I get all this wonderful stuff, but I don't get any economic reward from the fact that Amazon is the largest, most most valued company on the planet. I just pay a subscription every month to realize all the benefits, but there's no economic benefit. This new space with this new technology offers a marriage of both of those. It's like being an Amazon stockholder and a Prime holder all in one. Mind-blowing, game-changing.
No doubt.
And it'll
So
be
crazy.
interesting to see, like, this list. Please frame that list, turn that list into an NFT, because in 15 years, it'll be interesting to see what this is going to become relative to what you were projecting you would do 8 months into this space.
No
It
doubt.
might be fun just for you to look back and go, wow, how, because when I saw the internet coming, I honestly, if somebody would have said to me, you know what, eventually you're gonna have a phone in your hand and you're gonna press a button and a stranger's gonna show up and you're gonna get into their car happily, I would have said, no way. I would never just get into a car with some rando stranger. My mom instilled that into me as a child, never get into a car with a stranger. Now it's commonplace. I do it almost 3-4 times a week.
Yep.
In a foreign country where it's not my
crazy how
first
fast
language.
things change. Yeah.
It is. So it'll be fun. I love that you document this journey. Like, I'm documenting my journey, you're documenting your journey. Obviously, you're touching a lot more people than I am, but the fact that we have this common platform, that we do have access to people. People have access to us. And if they tune into us and they connect to us and they resonate with us, they stay with us. They become subscribers. They become contributors. They comment on the videos. I do a live stream every Friday night where people put in, I mean, geez, it's growing. And there's all these people that I keep seeing their name over and over and over again. And they're asking questions and sharing information that they came up with. Matter of fact, that was what directed me to you. On my live stream, somebody said, you should check out Tom Bilyue, Impact Theory YouTube channel.
I owe them a thanks.
And I did. And I was like, wow, this is great. I saw the Michael Saylor interview. Bam. And I watched the Raoul Pal interview. Bam. I saw the Anthony Pompliano in set. It was almost like COVID didn't exist for a moment. I was like, wow, this is wonderful. He's got a set. You're all in on this community platform, information dissemination. It just makes sense for you to build a community token for your community. And if you can add value to them beyond the content you make, it's just a win-win-win. And so good for you. My hat's off to you, young man.
Thank you, sir.
Anything you want to close with? This is where we do our final thought.
Follow me on Twitter if you're interested in NFT. That's where I go hard on crypto and NFT content. I'm on every social platform. It's all at Tom Bilyue. Other than that, man, thanks for having me on, dude. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Tom. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you for tuning in, folks. And until next time, Pura Vida.